Welcome, listeners. This is Still Here, Still Talking. I'm Karen.
And I'm Julie.
Well, Julie, have you ever looked back at a moment in your life and realized it was never really about what happened? It was about what it taught you?
Oh, hindsight 2020. Karen, I just remember
Yeah?
something that
What?
it just triggered me. I just remember holding you seeing this big key ring, and you have a really good story about that key ring because after you told me that story, I had to go buy one. I'd love to hear your story again.
Yeah, my that big key ring, it was my bailiff key ring. It was a ring, it was made out of steel and it didn't have a clasp or anything, but it fit right over my wrist, just like a bailiff, a jailer has. Had all my keys on it. But yeah, my story. Um For about 23 years or so, I had that simple habit of wearing my bailiff key ring around my wrist. And it wasn't something that I thought about or anything like that. It was just part of, getting dressed, like putting on my watch or my shoes. It was because it was just a practical thing that I did. And I had designed it this way because of for emergencies. When I worked in Boston and I worked downtown in the city, I wanted to make sure that I was prepared. So I wore my keys on the bailiff key ring around my wrist. So then one day I did something different. Instead of wearing it, I carried it in my hand. I didn't think twice about it. So
Hmm.
on that day, while I was working at a spa down in Florida, a man came in and pulled a gun and pressed it against my chest. And in an instant, everything changed. He
Hmm.
then threw me to the floor, and the key ring, which was not around my wrist, I was just carrying it, completely flung across the floor and was out of my reach. And so then, as um, things that were happening, and I won't get into that too many details about it, but as things were happening, I couldn't get the key ring, and if I had, I would have been able to get out of the building in the back through the back door and called 911, but I wasn't able to do that. So
Hmm.
uh, things happened, and eventually, the man left, and the police came, and everything was fine. Uh, but for a long time, I thought the lesson was simply, I couldn't get the gun out of his hand. I knew how to fire a gun, but I didn't know how to get the gun away from him. So, I kind of was like, that was the lesson. Well, in hindsight, I look back at it and realize that it wasn't about the gun at all. It was about the habit that I had. Those habits, that we practice every day, and some of them seem so insignificant, like that small little detail of putting the bailiff key ring on my wrist. It's, when you just look at it all by itself, it's insignificant, but it builds on something, and that is preparation.
Hmm.
These small steps, these small habits, they build up to something bigger. So it's it's just like, when you wear your seatbelt in the car. We don't think about it these days anymore, right? Most people get in the car and they just automatically put their seatbelt on.
Hmm.
So these habits that we build up, I look back now and say, yeah, it wasn't about the gun. It wasn't about the robbery. It was about the habit that I had of always having security in, always having that bailiff key ring on my wrist so that I could easily, have easy access to my keys to get into my car, to get into my house. And it was just one small habit. So the hindsight, the lesson I learned from that, Julie, is
Hmm.
preparation isn't something we do once. It's something we become. It's that one small habit at a time.
Karen, that's so powerful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Brings me to a story.
Yeah?
One
Tell me
day,
your story.
one day, it was a few years ago. Looking back, it was a few
Hmm.
years ago, and there was a family emergency, and it had snowed in New England winter, right? It had
Yeah.
snowed, but I always tried to leave my car closest to the driveway as I could.
Yeah.
in case of emergencies. I thought I was prepared. And I got the call and it was an emergency call. I had to get to the hospital right away for a loved one. And I went out and the snowplow come by and had completely plowed me in. And I said, oh no, I was in panic mode, as we do in emergencies. There was a plow truck going by and I stepped out. I'm like, "Can you please plow me? I'll pay you whatever." He goes, $20. I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much." And while he's plowing, I'm upstairs realizing I don't have $20. I had bags of change. I'm like, I didn't know what was in the bag of change. By the time I got out, I handed him a bag of change. And I said, "I'll catch up with you. I don't know what's in here. I'm so sorry." And I remember he had his window rolled down, and I handed him the bag of change, and he whipped that bag of change out in the parkway. And he had a 10-year-old son in there, and boy, what was said was like that poor kid. And, I was it was not a good scene. And
Mm,
he drove off, but I was able to get out and get to my emergency. And when I got home and just recently reflecting, I'm like, Karen, you just brought it's like, what is the story? Is it about the behavior of the plow person? Is
right.
it because I didn't have enough money? And I kept reflecting on it, and it was like
Hmm.
the story was it was I had to be better prepared. That's up to me.
Right.
That's not on the plow worker. That's not on an emergency bay. I have to be prepared. That is on me. And I work really hard on that now, because of that hindsight, right? I didn't really know that that's why I'm so like I got everything in its place, in case of emergency. But that was a valuable hindsight lesson for me.
Yeah, that's very true. What the insight that you have there is that it becomes part of us, these lessons, and we may not even recognize what the lesson is until maybe years later we're sitting down and we just reflect back and say, "Oh my God, that's why I do this now." Right, like what you just told in your story, you are much more prepared now so that you don't have those types of encounters.
I must add, though, on a quick note,
What?
I found he lived across the street from me, and it
Hmm.
was like I put a $20 bill in an envelope and I left it in his mailbox saying, "Thank you for plowing." So even with all that, I was still trying to do the right thing.
You have such good follow through. That was
I,
good.
I'm still just gonna do the right thing and pay him the money. He was whatever.
Yes. That's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah. And so Karen, you were also like this was really good for Karen and I because we were really doing a lot of reflecting and hindsight and seeing what it really is, what it's about, right? What have we
Yeah.
really learned? And Karen, you have an unbelievable story about you and your dad.
Yes. This story has been with me. The lessons I learned from this has been with me all my life because it happened when I was 4 years old. And that is when my family went to an air show, and we were living in the UK, and the children were, all my siblings, and including all of the other kids at the air show. They were getting rides on the fire trucks going across the airport tarmac, and kids are screaming and yelling and having a great time. And my two sisters and I climbed in and to the back of one of the fire trucks. And then I looked back and saw my dad standing there, and suddenly I panicked. I want my daddy. I mean, I was such a daddy's girl. So it was like
Mhm.
I could not see myself leaving him. So he reached
Aw.
in and he picked me up, lifted me up out of the truck, and as soon as I was in his arms and looking back at the my sisters still sitting in the truck, I then was like, changing my mind. No, I can't leave my sisters. I don't want them to go without me. So I'm like 4 years old now, still crying, going, I want to go for the ride. So my dad puts me back in. And
Oh,
so, yeah. So then when I'm back in, once again I go through the same cycle. I'm looking back at him going, ah, my mom, my daddy. So he picks me up and takes me out. And this time when he lifted me out, he looked at me and I can remember this, and I'm paraphrasing probably, but I remember this so well.
mhm.
This was, you know, this is what I've lived by.
Yeah.
And he said, um, if you can't make up your mind what you want, someone else will do it for you. You're
Um,
not going. And I sat there in his arms and I watched the fire truck pull away with my two sisters in it without me. And when they came back, they each had these huge black helium balloons. I mean, they were
oh,
enormous, and they were having fun with them. And when they were in the house with them, they were just like bouncing all over the ceiling.
ouch.
And yeah, and I wanted to play with the balloons so badly, and my father wouldn't let me, and he said, "You didn't participate, you didn't earn it, so you're not playing with it." And sorry about that if you can hear the motorcycles going by. But anyways, um, he said you didn't participate, you didn't earn it, so you can't play with it. And it just hurt my heart. So
Oh,
it
goodness.
was decades later, I'm still living by this lesson that I learned. And I didn't understand it at the time, but I understand it now in the hindsight, right? 2020
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that it 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 life asks us to make choices, and it's up to us to make those choices and not have somebody else make them for us. And so when we hesitate, we're afraid. It may be because we're afraid to make the wrong choice. And sometimes we wait too long and that decision then gets made for us.
Mm,
And so it may not be what we wanted. And so I learned that in hindsight, looking back at this, I learned that I make the choice. I choose. So then I own the outcome, not me living with the outcome because of somebody else's choices, but I own the outcome because I chose. So yeah, so I've carried that lesson with me my entire life. And some people, well, to this day will say, "You're so self-determined." It's like,
mhm.
yes, I know what I want, when I want it, and how I want it.
Valuable
Thanks,
lesson.
Dad.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. Yeah. And I'm sure you have some stories like that too, where you have about choices and things like that.
Oh, yes. The other day when I was sitting and relaxing, pausing right in the pause,
Right, in the pause.
thinking about some topics that we could share with you, with our listeners today, I thought, um, I thought back at my stepdad and hindsight. Why did I get so connected with my stepdad? And I was trying to figure out what I learned in hindsight. And as I'm thinking, everything started unraveling like an onion, right? You start and you
Mm-hmm.
start peeling, and then the tears come, and then it just never ends. And reflecting on it hindsight, like I adored my stepfather because he relieved a lot of the pressure that I put on myself being in a family. My mother was single, like I've shared. I always had a lot of pressure. And looking back, like he relieved that pressure.
Mm,
And I didn't realize how much pressure I was. Now, I'm just recently realizing this, just recently. And then I went on and made, now Karen talks about, I made choices. I was looking for things and people and places to relieve the pressure that I put on myself, and many times creating more pressure. And I
mm,
do that with work too. Like I'm always looking to relieve the pressure. And Karen, you just really helped me out today. Like the pressure for me is I have to be responsible for my boundaries. That's my part.
right,
Like that's the lesson. Like putting healthy boundaries in so I don't feel so pressured. Saying no, saying yes, saying I can't, saying all those things. So that is all, that's the lesson, not the
right.
pressure itself, but I have to reflect on relieving pressure and doing what I need to do with boundaries.
Right. Many times that's what it is that we can look at an incident, a moment in time and think, oh, it was the gun, it was the keys, it was, the pressure. No, if we look back, we can see that maybe it's actually something else. And like what you did with this, and yes, we had many discussions about it. It wasn't about the pressure. Yes, that was the effect, that
Mhm.
you were having was the pressure, and a lot of it internal, as well as external, but it was about boundary setting. It was your ability to choose what you wanted. And we talked about this as like putting a fence around yourself. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be a moat. It doesn't have to be the Great Wall of China. It is just putting up this nice friendly fence that says this is my boundary and I'm not going to permit certain activities or certain things to happen inside my fence. Who cares what's going on out and about? Maybe we do to some degree, but it was about your boundary. And then once you have that boundary up, then there's less pressure, that you can actually operate within it, when it does happen because there's your boundary. So that was good lessons and good reflection. And you did a
Oh,
lot of that just in the last couple of days, right?
oh my goodness. I felt like my head was going to explode. Like enough onion, like put it away. I can't see anymore. I gotta just put it away. Um, uh, which kind of brings me to like our last couple stories here we like to share with you is like
Yeah.
uh, fear versus instinct. And I know Karen has a really good story on this.
Yeah, this is one of
About your
those.
first marriage, I think.
Yes, the first of the two. Hopefully only two.
You
But
first
yeah,
kid. Oh.
yeah, my first husband, the man that I married the first time, he I spent a lot of life wondering how to tell the difference between fear and an intuition, and this story definitely helped me understand what was, some of the things that I experienced, as well as I'm sure many of our listeners experience. And that is that this person that I had known for, 3 or 4 years before we actually started dating, he was a real good friend of mine, a real good male friend. But he was married at the time, and no, I did not date him while he was married. But when he got divorced, then he asked me to be with him, and he asked me almost immediately to marry him, and I said no,
Hmm?
because I just couldn't see myself being married to him. But then months later, he got orders, and he was in the military, and he got stationed overseas, and I was like missing him when he was gone. And
Yeah.
so I basically called him up and asked him if, his proposal still stood because I was missing him, and he said yes, and so he flew back, and 2 days before the wedding, I basically tried to step out of the wedding. I was like wanted to cancel it because I realized in my world that I wasn't in love with him. And I loved him, but I wasn't in love with him. But he was telling me that I was wrong, that I was, and talk about boundaries, that I was wrong, and that it was just pre-wedding jitters, like the runaway bride. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess you're right. But then that day that we got married, that night, I basically did sit down with him and tell him I don't think this was the right thing for us to do. My intuition was telling me this, but he kept saying it was
Mhm.
just my fear. And so then eventually, over time, I realized my intuition was right because
Mhm.
this person turned out to be um, um, a thief, a liar, and a serial cheater. So my intuition was there, but I looked at it as fear, and I was believing what this other person was telling me, that it was fear. So in hindsight, I look back at it and go, yeah, my intuition was right. I was right about this, that I shouldn't, I should not have gotten married to this person. I don't regret it, but it was, I should have listened to myself. I should have listened to my
Yeah.
intuition. But it was like as I was saying, I didn't know for sure whether or not if it was fear-based, and I had to look at this particular moment in my life many times from different angles to help myself, determine exactly what happened. And yeah, so we have to look at it like I did was it wasn't fear, even though I thought it might have been, and that I
Mhm.
had been told it was, and it wasn't. And it wasn't fear, it was my intuition. So yeah, listen to your gut, listen to your intuition, listen to your heart when it whispers something isn't right.
Yeah, like for me, that like a gut feeling. I
Yeah.
remember, I mean, I pretty much have good instinct, but like Karen, I did a lot of running, not like Karen, but like her story. Um,
Hmm.
I did a lot of convincing myself because I was full of fear. But this one particular day when I had just taken on a job, um, and I was so excited. It was going to be a whole new venture for me, and I wanted it. I loved it. I got the badge. I felt like I was a part of it. Um, and I was there only a couple weeks, and it was like a medical facility. I won't get into all the details of where, when, what, um, to protect the innocent, you know. But there was a medical emergency, and there was somebody on the floor, and they were convulsing, and nobody was calling 911. I mean, there were nurses
Mm.
available, but everybody was just watching. I'm like, give me the phone. I'm
Oh
going to
my
call
gosh.
911. And they're like, no, no, we'll handle it. We'll handle it. And when I left that night, I didn't feel that great. And I got called in the office the next day, and they said, if you ever call 911 on your own, we're going to have to let you go. And I didn't say anything at that point. I went home and thought about it. And I came the next day. I was going to just give my resignation because I told them, like, nobody's going to tell me when I can and cannot do 911. That is not going to happen. Um, and when I came in, there was a car outside, and somebody had actually passed away that night.
Oh my
So
gosh.
my instinct was right. And
Yeah.
I was, even though I wanted this job, like, even though I was fearful that I wouldn't get another job, it's still, I went with my gut. Like, this is not the place for me. And I carry that with me all the time when I'm facing, not exactly, but similar things that happen in my life during the day, or I think about that story all the time.
Yeah, well, once again, it's definitely that was your intuition was whispering to you something isn't right, and you listened to it and followed through on it. And that was
Yeah.
very good, you know.
So
Yeah,
at this
almost
point, we're
leaves
gonna,
me speechless.
well, at this
What a
point,
story. Thank you for sharing.
oh, thank you for sharing. And we just, to our listeners, your story matters, your voice matters. Talk to us anytime and our email address is still here, still talking at yahoo.com.
And before we go, look back at a moment from your own life that still has something to teach you. And sometimes the lessons has been there, or the lesson has been there all along, waiting for you to see it. And each time we look back, we can look at it as at a different angle and see something different that we didn't see before. So thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate you. We are still here, still talking. We're not experts. We're just experienced.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.